From the largest cobras in the world found by workers, and not only, to a record-breaking anaconda, intruders in homes, and a snake that looks suspiciously like a prehistoric snake. In this episode, I'll show you these and other huge and unusual snakes caught on camera. Let's go! When you come across a huge snake, it's a pretty creepy sight, but it's even creepier when that snake is busy eating someone huge at that moment. Residents of the Philippines were shocked when they saw just such a sight. Not far from the rice field of a village, a huge cobra was devouring a python. Pythons, as we know, are not the tiniest of snakes. You'd have to be a really huge cobra to eat one. Cobras eat snakes often, but usually prefer eating the not-so-big ones and their own congeners. Pythons, on the other hand, are a rarity in their diet, but it seems that this was one of the largest cobras in the world, if not the largest in general, so it managed to eat the giant whole. However, the cobra couldn't survive after such an extreme meal. And here's another record-breaking cobra. This time it didn't eat anyone and didn't die from overeating, but it also had problems. The cobra got stuck under some concrete slab. The locals decided to help it. Besides, the cobra would get out on its own and crawl to take it out on everyone. Some watered the cobra so that it would come to its senses and not die of dehydration. Others pulled it, and still others hooked the snake to help it get out of the trap. The operation was successful. One of the largest cobras on the planet was saved, and the main thing is that it didn't want to take revenge on anyone. In South America, you always need to be on your guard. Even if you're resting by a shallow stream somewhere in the forest, don't think that there can be no snakes nearby. There can be. Moreover, these snakes can be colossal, as in this case. A very long and massive snake was slithering through the shallow water, but fortunately not towards people. The reptile wasn't interested in the tourists at all. It seemed to want to get out of there. It was for the best. There are huge snakes, not only in South America, but also in India, where there are a lot of these creeping creatures. But snakes like this one are one in a million. A resident of the Indian state of Tamil Nadu filmed a gigantic monster in some forest. It's hard to even imagine how big and massive this snake really is, but it can be seen that it's definitely one of the largest on the whole planet. It's even possible that it's the leader among all snakes in terms of size. Someone even believes that the author of the video filmed the surviving prehistoric Titanoboa snake. Do you think that this could be the case? Or is it just some colossal local python? It often happens that one stumbles upon giant snakes by accident, and this video is a great proof of that. A worker was digging up the ground with an excavator on a large farm plot when suddenly a giant anaconda ended up in his bucket. No one expected this. Check out its size. Apparently, the snake lived at the very edge of the water, or even right in it, which is why it was lifted with the bucket. The anaconda briefly became part of the bucket and even participated in the dig, but in the end, the worker managed to return it back to the water. Undoubtedly, the anaconda from the previous video was big, but it's not even close to as big as this monster found in the Dominican Republic. Look how huge it is! The snake is hanging on the bucket of the excavator, which is raised high above the ground, and its body, on both sides, still touches the ground. This reptile seems to set a world record, but unfortunately, no official measurements have been taken. But now we know that it's quite possible to find a 33-foot-long snake in the jungle that people used to have a hard time believing. Bumping into a snake somewhere in the woods is not surprising, even if it is very large. But snakes can be everywhere, even right under your house. The residents of this small hut began to suspect this and called the workers. They arrived with a forklift truck, picked up and lifted the house, and saw a whole den of creepy snakes. It's incredible how they weren't crushed by the house itself. And why did they decide to make a home there at all? Couldn't they have found a better place? Okay, snakes under the house aren't so bad. To me, it's much creepier when they sneak right into houses and settle there. In Asia, huge pythons often do that. Here, for example, a python crawled under the ceiling, and the workers had to do some sort of remodeling and renovation to get the snake out. It was very large. Something similar happened in this case as well. By joining forces, the people managed to lure the snake out and pull it out of the subceiling space. One was pushing it towards the ceiling into another room, where two more people were already waiting for the snake. Unfortunately, workers often have to destroy the ceiling to get such intruders, and this case was no exception. But the snake handler managed to pull out a very massive and dangerous snake from under the ceiling. Look how it tried to bite him. It's definitely necessary to get rid of such a threat in the house without delay. Finding a giant snake in Asia isn't a problem. But what about the US? I can understand stumbling upon a python in Florida, but a giant creeping creature in Detroit is something new. This is exactly the kind of uninvited guest that decided to brighten up people's drab lives and climbed up on a garage. The 18-foot-long giant crawled on the roof and shocked everyone who passed by. Fortunately, the snake was soon removed so that it wouldn't harm anyone. However, this would hardly have happened because the python turned out to be domestic. Apparently, the reptile just decided to take a walk. Imagine the feeling of a person who decided to go into their garden, look at their plants, water something, and suddenly saw such a huge reptile crawling along the stone wall. Personally, I wouldn't go into the garden again after that. Just look at how big this snake is. It's one of the biggest snakes I've ever seen in my life. Fortunately, the snake decided not to linger in the garden and slowly crawled away. Apparently, in that garden, you and I saw another python again. These snakes are famous for their gigantic size, so a colossal python is not uncommon in the animal world. However, it's much rarer to see a colossal rattlesnake. It was caught on camera in Florida. Rattlesnakes cannot be called very small, but this individual, according to the author of the video, was no less than 6.5 feet. Such individuals are not often found. Unlike pythons, which have no venom, rattlesnakes have a fairly powerful toxin. The venom of the rattlesnakes affect the tissues at the site of the bite, can cause problems with blood, and in some cases, its venom can finish a person literally in a matter of minutes. In general, you should stay away from these reptiles, especially if they're as huge as the one in this video. It's not often you see a huge rattlesnake, but it's even rarer to come across something like this. Some might think it's a mutant caterpillar, but it's actually a snake. It's a puff adder, which is usually characterized by a slender body. In this case, however, the snake is clearly not keeping to its diet. It's fat, and it's also very short, which makes the situation funny. On top of that, it really does move around like a caterpillar rather than a snake, but it's still dangerous to mess with this reptile. Even such a ridiculous viper can easily kill a person. The puff adder is considered one of the most dangerous snakes in Africa, where it's common. For a human, every 5th or 6th bite leads to a fatal outcome. Next up is anaconda. Today we saw it in different places, but we haven't seen it on the road yet. This huge snake was trying to crawl over a small highway and get to the opposite side of the road. No one wanted to mess with such a huge reptile, so the drivers stopped obediently. The snake crawled along the road like a king, taking its time, but in the end it still reached its destination without harming anyone. And this snake decided to be even closer to cars in the most literal sense. This python liked the car so much that it decided to crawl under it and settle down there. The snake wrapped itself around the wheel and even stuck its head through the rim. They tried to get the python out of there, but at first it was unsuccessful. It clearly didn't want to get off its favorite car, but in the end, by joining forces, the people managed to pull it away from the transport. But who knows for how long? I'm sure the python will return there again. It's always dangerous to deal with venomous snakes, especially if we're talking about the eastern brown snake, the second most venomous land snake on the planet. It was it that this man managed to catch. As you can see, the snake is not small. As a rule, eastern brown snakes are smaller. This large reptile didn't like being dragged out of its temporary den and treated like this. The snake tries to bite the snake catcher, but he's a professional and will not let the reptile do it. Always watch your step when walking in the woods, especially if there are snakes where you live. Otherwise, you can accidentally step on such a giant and make it very angry. However, it's hard not to notice such a huge thing, even if you don't watch your step. And I also advise you to pay attention to the trees. Sometimes you can see such surprises on them. It's a python, not some huge venomous snake, but that doesn't mean it's safe. If it's disturbed, or even more so angered, it will definitely try to tie the offender down with its deadly rings. Millions of years ago, our planet was home to Titanoboa, the largest snake in history, which had incredibly impressive size and a terrifying appearance. Could any snake from our time have confronted it? Let's find it out. Titanoboa. If you've never seen this snake on the internet, believe me, you've missed a lot. After all, this enormous creature crawled around our planet about 60 million years ago. It was the size of a bus, and there was little competition for it on land. Crocodiles, or something similar to them, were an easy snack for Titanoboa, and it wasn't even necessary to try hard to catch them. Moreover, the snake lived at a time when dinosaurs were extinct, so it had no equal. Its current descendants, boa constrictors, are not small guys either, but compared to their great-great-grandmother that could grow up to 50 feet in length and weighed more than a ton, today's snakes, no matter how big they are small. Even the current record holder, the anaconda, is overtaken by Tanaboa 2 to 3 times in terms of length and about 5 to 6 times in terms of weight. But here it's worth including logic and thinking about how exactly such a large creature existed. Dragging a heavy carcass on the ground isn't an easy job, so Titanoboa moved to lakes and swamps where it was much easier to hunt. Speaking of hunting, do you know how Titanoboa did it? If most snakes have choking as a main technique, our beauty made one powerful throw from an ambush, just like the crocodile mentioned in the beginning. But as everyone knows, there's always a bigger fish, and so it was in the case of Titanoboa. It was opposed by the giant Carbonemys turtle, an enlarged version of the modern common snapping turtle. These guys didn't eat each other, but they constantly had clashes, at least for territory. Giant crocodiles also occasionally appeared and punished Titanoboa snakes to the fullest extent. You hear about these enormous creatures, especially snakes, and you can't help but wonder, what if Titanoboa still exists? What if it's swimming somewhere in the depths and waiting for the moment to attack? Well, there's no way to disprove it, but here's the good news. In the 1930s, the New York Zoological Society announced a prize of $1,000 to anyone who could prove the existence of a snake longer than 40 feet. Time passed and no one took the money, so the size of the snake was reduced to 33 feet. Moreover, the amount of the reward grew every year, and it's now more than $50,000. So if such a snake even shows up, it'll be necessary to run in the face of fear and get the money. It won't be worthless for sure. However, on the other hand, there's still something to worry about. Though the giant Titanoboa doesn't show itself in our time, Earth is teeming with other creepy creatures, some of them which are 100 times more dangerous than the legendary Titanoboa. Now, I'll show you them. Inland taipan. Yes, this terrible representative of reptiles is 100 times stronger than the abnormal Titanoboa. Many people know about its habitat, it's Australia. There it has long been scaring the locals, not allowing them to travel in peace in the deserts. It's understandable because the inland taipan is at least very large. Though it's not the largest snake, I personally cannot dare to call the 6.5-foot giant creature small. And its tricky color intensifies the situation, because of which the inland taipan definitely masks in the sand and scares people even more effectively. I think no one will argue that to find a yellow inland taipan in the yellow sands is as difficult as to find a black cat in a dark room. Well, the main reason to be afraid of the snake and to beware of it is, of course, its venomous nature. The inland taipan rightfully takes the place of the most venomous land snake on the planet. One dose of this monster's venom is enough to kill over 250,000 mice in the blink of an eye. Can you imagine that? As for us, the inland taipan can kill 100 people at a time. The hearts of hypothetical test subjects will stop forever just 30 minutes after encountering this monster. Therefore, it's high time to thank the creature's restrained character, thanks to which it does not aim to kill off our entire population. The inland taipan prefers to enjoy various mice, turkeys, rats, and the like. But if Titanoboa were to get in its way, the taipan could eat it too. After all, the giant simply wouldn't have enough time to understand how it was bitten from different sides by this monster. It would have been impossible to escape the bite. And it would not be easy to predict the attack either, because the inland taipan forever hides not only in the sands but also among the rocks with cracks. This is why the animal almost never shows up on the radars of other creatures. Those who listened carefully will remember me mentioning that the inland taipan doesn't go into human territory, eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner in its native desert territory. But there is an entirely different case, the eastern brown snake. It can be found on farms or settlements because the snake's diet consists mainly of rodents. This natural wonder hunts mostly in the daytime. It doesn't attack first, but if the snake is disturbed, the aggressor will regret the day it was born. There's good news for humans. The lethality of a bite from this creature is less than 20%, so the chances of survival are good. I wouldn't risk it though. So if one of you sees an S-shaped snake of brown color near the habitat of rodents, it's better to retreat slowly, without sudden movements. Belcher's sea snake. And here's another creature that would gladly fight Titanoboa, the inland taipan, or anyone else. But it's underwater, and unfortunately, or fortunately, we'll never see these fights. This beauty is named after the British admiral and explorer Sir Edward Belcher, who first discovered it. The length of this reptile is not too great, no more than 3.5 feet. The snake loves reefs and can be underwater for up to 8 minutes. The main food for the Belcher sea snake is fish or shellfish. The paradox is that the venom of this creature can kill 1,000 adults at once, but what's interesting, the snake isn't interested in us at all. For this reason, divers swimming underwater can take pictures to remember. Plus, for the sake of interest, they can examine the snake, touching it and turning it around. One more fact allows not worrying about it. Almost always, or to be exact 90% of the time, the Belcher sea snake prefers to make a dry bite without injecting venom. It's necessary to scare away an unwanted guest and escape from the place of its detection. And now we'll talk about the world's fastest snake, the black mamba. This extraordinarily beautiful creature is found in Africa. It's quite large, aggressive, and cruel to everything and everyone. Like I said, it's very fast. It can move at a speed of over 7 miles per hour, which is about the average running speed of a trained human. If the black mamba does attack, it makes several bites at once. The first is to weaken the prey, and the rest to finish it off. The black mamba is capable of injecting up to 400 milligrams of venom into its offender. And when you consider that even 15 milligrams are enough to kill a person, the scale of danger begins to amaze even more. But the black mamba has a silver lining. The same venom, in addition to its danger, is a great painkiller. For example, French biologists used one of its key components, the toxic proteins membalgins, to make an analgesic. It's more effective than morphine and is not addictive. Yellow-bellied sea snake. Since I started talking about the beauty of snakes, mentioning the black mamba, it would be strange not to tell you about this beauty as well. It's found in the waters of the Indian and Pacific Oceans and almost never attacks people. Only in cases of self-defense, but no more than that. At the same time, the venom of the yellow-bellied sea snake is dangerous. One bite's enough for about 3 people. But as if that were nothing. I mean, compared to the inland taipan or the Belcher sea snake, it's not powerful venom. Nevertheless, even the venom of the yellow-bellied sea snake is murderous. By the way, did you know that it was on this snake that scientists from the United States proved that sea snakes can go without water for up to 7 months? Also, these same scientists observed them for several years and found out that sea snakes quench their thirst only with fresh water. Seawater doesn't suit them at all. If there are no other options, these snakes would rather starve or lose up to 25% of their body weight, but they will not drink salt water. Tiger snake. We've just talked about a snake that can handle only 3 people at a time, and now here's a creepy killer that won't spare anyone. The tiger snake can kill 400 people without blinking an eye. This monster lives in southeastern Australia and the island of Tasmania. Although, why did I immediately put a monster mark on the snake? In case of danger, it will not flail its tail, stick out into an S shape and stuff, but will simply crawl away and wait out the mess. The tool of the tiger snake becomes active only in the process of self-defense, but in no other way. Moreover, in order to piss off this creature, it must at the very least be detected. And it's not so easy to do so, because the tiger snake is a real pro of camouflage. The coloring of its skin depends entirely on the season and environment and can be brown, orange, gray, green, or black. The biggest snake in the world. I think many people know that such a snake is the reticulated python. However, the most massive and, at the same time, enormous is still considered to be the anaconda. And it was this creature that people found in the Amazon region. The creature they found was more than 16 feet long. Of course, it was also quite fat. I don't understand why exactly people tried to catch the snake. Perhaps they believe the Aboriginal legend that the one who catches the snake receives its enormous spiritual power. And since this anaconda is one of the largest snakes known to science, the guys must have gotten a lot of power. Nevertheless, I'd be extremely careful if I were them, because such a snake can swallow a grown man. In fact, these creatures are not at all concerned about who they'll eat. Even cannibalism in their case is a normal thing when anacondas are very hungry. The main body color of the most massive snake of the world fauna is grayish-green, with 2 rows of large brown spots of round or oblong shape alternating in staggering pattern. So if you suddenly notice something of this color, better run away. There will be little good from the encounter. Electric eel. This creature swims in the quiet backwaters of the Amazon and Orinoco river basins. Despite its name, these eels are closer to catfish than real eels. Adults have a size up to 8 feet, but most often you can meet these creatures with a body length of about 5 feet. In any case, these creatures owe their strength not to their size, which they'll crush all enemies, but to a secret weapon. I'm talking about special cells that generate enormous electric discharges. These cells, by the way, occupy almost the entire body of the electric eel. The positive pull is on the head and the negative pull is on the tail. The increase of the power is due to the consecutive connection of these cells. Thus, when the electric eel is unhappy about something, it can easily unleash a discharge of up to 860 volts at its prey. This value is almost 4 times higher than that which can be obtained from an accidental touch to a socket. As you understand, this is the kind of gift the electric eel uses when hunting fish. A discharge of this power easily stuns fish in a 3-foot radius around the eel. Nevertheless, a powerful discharge is the only thing the fish can boast of. After all, it has poor eyesight, no teeth, plus it lives mostly in murky waters. The only thing that saves it is the same electric shock, which helps find fish. Black caiman. And this is the neighbor of the electric eel, which is by no means a less dangerous animal. This large South American crocodile can eat any prey, literally anything it can get its hands on. In this eagerness to eat, that sometimes ruins the powerful predator's life. For example, it can attack an electric eel. Yes, the eel's not small, which means that it has plenty of delicacies. Nevertheless, I wouldn't advise attacking it because something like this could happen. But don't rush to think that the black caiman is one that mindlessly runs after its prey and often gets screwed. On the contrary, this predator almost always gets what it wants. After all, it's one of the largest predators in the Amazon region. The adult black caiman reaches a body length of 13 to 15 feet, and it's the largest animal in South America after the Orinoco crocodile. An advantage that's specific to these animals is their adaptability. They can hunt both on land and feel great in the water. Living underwater, by the way, is helped by a kind of film that's right in front of their eyes. Black caimans also have great speed, but most often they hunt wisely. They lure their prey into their ruthless jaws, ready to crush even the bones. Also, in case you didn't know, these creatures, when in danger, can make a sound similar to a dog barking. That's how they alert their congeners and call for help. That's all, guys. Which Amazon animal impressed you the most? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you later.